You're writing a book right now about America's involvement in Syria, and this is a civil war that's been going on since 2011. We're talking 12 million displaced people, refugees, 500,000 deaths or estimated, so we know. What are you covering in this book? What do you feel like it's important to explain, I guess primarily for an American audience, about America's involvement in this very long civil war?
Well, I'm not necessarily in this book trying to kind of lay out all of the policy. It's more of a deep look at Americans on kind of who fought on different sides of the war. So the military being one of those, but also people who joined ISIS and the YPG, which is a Kurdish group fighting ISIS. And there's just so many insane stories. I've met 50, 60 people who fought there, and there's like ex-military people, there's anarchists and communists, random guys that were just like, I'm working at Walmart and I want to do something meaningful, so I'm going to go fight ISIS. So, I'm following some of these people through their experience, kind of on both sides of the front line, which also had, American aircraft overhead, providing aerial support sometimes to, anarchists and communists. It was a weird world, weird war. But, I will talk about also how, the CIA's program and the military program a bit. And one of the weird things about the American involvement in Syria is that different parts of the government are kind of at odds with each other. Like you had the CIA backing the Free Syrian Army against Assad, and then you had the military essentially trying to fight ISIS and wanted, Assad to stay. So it was, a clusterfuck, basically.
Jesus. How did that strategy, or that lack of a strategy, change when Obama left office and under the last 4 years of Trump?
Well, towards the end of Obama's presidency, there was a turn kind of away from the strategy of trying to topple Assad, or at least back the rebels that were trying to topple him, because of ISIS, and because they're even, the rebels were getting more mixed up in Islamic groups, especially Jabhat al-Nusra, which is Al-Qaeda. So Obama was shifting kind of away from that, and then Trump, officially ended it pretty quickly and focused on ISIS. And the weird thing is that I think when people look back on America's involvement in Syria, it's like we think about the moment that Obama was thinking about bombing Syria, the chemical attacks, and I think the involvement of the Trump administration has gotten a lot less attention. But the level of bombing is just accelerated so tremendously under Trump. And this is all in the counter-ISIS campaign. But there was an entire city, which I've been to many times, Raqqa, which was just flattened. I've never seen anything like this. And it was just completely bombarded from the air. So it was this kind of like war strategy where, Americans were not putting themselves at risk. They had, essentially people on the ground fighting, and they were just bombing from the air. And people, kind of gave the U.S. carte blanche because it was ISIS. Everyone wanted to get rid of ISIS. So it was kind of like, do what you have to do.
And there was never, what was the facilitation, or what has been the humanitarian facilitation of any kind of civilians out of that situation? Like, that wasn't even on the table to negotiate.
Yeah, it was hard. ISIS was not letting civilians out of these cities also, so people would try to leave and they would get shot because ISIS knew that, having civilians in the city was easier for them. But they weirdly were kind of banking on the idea that Americans would not bomb civilians,
They gambled wrong there.
Right?
People found ways out at different times, before, like, the war would kind of come to each city at a different time. And there were periods where people could leave, but a lot of people didn't, either because they didn't know it was coming or they couldn't, they had no money. It's not easy just to kind of leave your house in the middle of a war zone.
Yeah. I mean, now, it's like, it definitely feels like the consensus, obviously, between Assad and Russia, who is helped on the side of Assad, and now the U.S. have kind of been coalescing, right? And and there's so many foreign actors in what is effectively a proxy war and has been a proxy war. But now that we're like in the year 2020, what state is Syria in now, and where do things stand?
So the last time I was in Syria was in February, and even at that time, this has just gotten worse. But the economic situation is really, really bad in Syria. We think about like the bombings and this kind of sort of spectacular battles, which were horrific, but the country is now just really being ground down, and it's also affected, populations that have been pro-Assad, because people have heating gas anymore. So there's been moments of kind of like protests in Alawite cities, and but I think there's somewhat of a stalemate in the country for now. The U.S. and its allies control about a third of the country. Assad is pretty clearly won the rest of the country, aside from the area the U.S. controls, which is the northeast, and then also Idlib, which is the kind of last pocket that's held by the opposition. Mm-hmm. So, they've been trying to fight to regain that. So that city gets bombed still from the Syrian government and Russia. And then there's the wild card of Turkey, which, Turkey is also always wanting to kind of move in on the Kurds in the northeast, but it's for now the U.S. is there. So, necessarily think that these lines that have been drawn are going to stay this way. It's just hard to know. It really is pretty much completely dependent on these international backers that are kind of, using their proxies on the ground.
Right. I mean, what I was
mentioning earlier with this road rage is you have these situations now where, like, the U.S. and Russia are kind of right next to each other in some places, and literally, like, there will be, Russian convoys driving down the road next to an American convoy, and they'll like be trying to push each other off the road. It's like they won't shoot at each other, but they're like getting in these crazy road rage situations. It's really bizarre.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, I mean, if there's like, this is the thing. It's like the one positive is that there's maybe less ISIS, right? But then how many civilians had to die to accomplish that? But it is like one of the many, 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 many forces. And like, I encourage everyone to read Shane's piece about this for Mother Jones, which also is a video series. And is it behind the front lines or behind
the lines? Yeah.
Hey, you made it to the end of the clip. That's probably because you like left politics and comedy, and me is gonna deliver. I mean, I am going to deliver more of that. So why don't you subscribe to this channel right now, and you'll never miss another show again. Ever